It's 12 minutes to 2. Well, we've been listening to the latest changes on the easing of restrictions, and we now have a roadmap for that. If you've just joined us, June 29th is when Stage 3 restrictions will be lifted in South Australia, and that will see numbers of up to 75 in indoor venues in per room, but up to 300 per venue, as long as they are in separate rooms and no greater than groups of 75. We will also see from July 20th, South Australia's borders open across the board, with the possibility that some from jurisdictions that don't pose as great a health risk, possibly on the back of given some legal advice that they're waiting to hear back from, they might open a little bit earlier. So what do you think about those things? We'd love to hear from you. 1300 222 891 or text me on 0467 922 891. One of our texters says the nanny state restrictions continue. I would understand the concern if we had active community spread, but we don't and haven't had for a very long time. How can we have a pandemic when we don't have any virus? Enough is enough. Keep the borders closed and let's get on with it. Another texter says, SA banging some COVID drum but just doesn't hold up to investigation. Please deport me to New Zealand. Well, certainly one of the big announcements was the opening of the borders. It's something I know many of you have been waiting for. So what's this going to mean? Andrew Sullivan from the Don't Forget Travel Group. Was that music to your ears, getting a final date, Andrew?
It was brilliant news, actually. I mean, any news where there's any easing of restrictions is music to our ears.
Is it soon enough in your view? July 20th is still, some 6 weeks away?
I mean, you'd love it to be open tomorrow, but, I understand there's regulations. Airlines will have to start re-looking at their schedules. People will have to start planning. So I guess probably realistic to open up really early. At least this gives us a date for us to work towards. When people ask us, when can they travel, at least we can say, yes, you'll at least be able to travel by the 20th of July.
And this is what I imagine is difficult for everybody, is the uncertainty. Sometimes a date, whether it's the date you want or not, at least the certainty brings some plans that you can make.
Correct, because I think what's been happening with the uncertainty, and people have just there's been a lot of speculation. So people are hearing stories from their next door neighbour, reading something here and looking on, Facebook now being the doyen of all things accurate. At least this now puts a bed to a lot of that speculation. So we get a little bit of certainty.
What are people wanting to do? Is it talking about going to, like caravanning holidays? Is it people wanting to hop on flights and going for a holiday at Noosa or the Sunshine Coast? What are they looking at doing?
To be quite honest, we're still getting a lot of questions about being able to travel overseas. I think people, particularly as it gets cold here, people would love to head towards Northern Hemisphere summer. But of course, once you've disappointed them with that, they then tend to think a little bit more locally. And then most recently, there's been a lot of interest in South Australia, even from interstate people. So that's good news for our state. But I think you'll find with Queensland, when they open their borders up, people are going to want to head up north just to get out of the cold.
From South Australia and maybe some of the other states, but I would imagine that South Australia might get a few of those who are perhaps in that weird middle ground of still being a bit fearful of COVID but wanting to travel, because we've had such a good history.
Yes, and there's been an absolute... I don't want to use the word unprecedented. There's been a lot of interest in intrastate travel. There's been, particularly with Kangaroo Island after the bushfires, people have really wanted to go over there and support that community. Even just getting out to Victor Harbour or the Flinders. The Flinders is actually proving to be another area of great interest.
One of the things that's going to be interesting, we've got our date for South Australia, July 20. I'm not sure if we've got dates from the other states yet, but it may still hold problems for people going to WA, for instance. The Prime Minister indicating that the Premier in Western Australia, less likely to want to put a date on it at this point.
Yes, I must admit I haven't heard anything from the other states as yet, because I was just watching the Mr Marshall's press conference. I know the Prime Minister is pushing to get all states open because he was saying we can't be expecting all borders or international borders to be open if the local borders aren't open. So this so-called mythical New Zealand travel bubble won't happen. So he's definitely putting pressure on the other states. So, yeah, at this stage I haven't heard.
Andrew, before we let you go, you obviously deal with customers, but you also deal with tour operators and that sort of thing.
Yes.
What will this news mean for them, particularly a lot of the local South Australian tour operators?
I think it will mean at least more inquiries. I think people will start to feel a little bit more comfortable in at least planning for travelling. And of course, once you get an inquiry, then there'll be extra revenue coming later. So at this stage, it's just a little bit of a glimmer of hope for everybody.
Andrew Sullivan, good to talk with you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sonia.
Andrew is from the Don't Forget Travel Group with that news that borders in South Australia will open